Hi, my name is Judith Reidy. I am so happy that you could join me today. I am doing a slideshow, going to be doing a slideshow for you to explain to you how to select images when you're just starting out painting uh, that you want to paint, or if you don't actually want to paint the image, you want to make a composition from the image. So we're going to talk about that today, and so I'm going to need to share my screen. My name is Judith Reidy. I teach painting workshops in person and online, and I hope you can participate more. So here we go. I got to share my screen. Here we are. Okay, we're going to share it. You know, selecting an image. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger. There we go. There. Selecting an image for creating a painting composition is what this is going to be about. For beginners, some images are easier to use than others. First of all, I want to ask you, what is a painting composition? You know, we talk about compositions. We have a writing composition where you are using words. You have a musical composition where you're using sounds and silence. And then you have an painting composition where you use elements of color and value and shape. So we're going to be talking about painting composition. It's basically an arrangement of elements designed to capture the imagination of whoever is viewing it in a compelling way. It is a design that a recipient takes notice of. When you walk down, you think, "Ooh, look at that." Yeah. Is intrigued by, is aroused by. Technically, any image could be used as the basis for a composition. But some resources, some scenes, some setups, some images are easier to use than others. What are the elements of composition? There are really two basic categories. One are the superficial things, I'm going to call them superficial things, such as recognizable objects, trees, people, earth, water, sun, cups, table, beverages, whatever thing we are painting, or we may think we are painting, when in fact, the more foundational elements, the foundational structural elements in which you construct anything in a painting are shape, line, lights and darks, and hue. Those are the major ones. It's mostly shapes, lights and darks, and hue. So a composition is built with those structural elements. They're key. Learning to make compositions. The artist must learn to see the world through foundational structural elements such as shapes, lights, darks. Everything is broken down into these elements. You don't paint an eye. You paint a shape, an arc. You paint a shadow, the shape of the shadow. My example, I'm going to give you my example of how I discovered this. And I kind of take it for granted, but I forget sometimes when I teach that most people haven't had this experience. They come and they think, I want to paint this tree, or I want to paint this portrait. And they don't really understand that you're not really painting a tree or a portrait. And the way I was taught to do this is when I took one of my drawing classes at the university years and years ago. They had set up in front of us this setup of different things. Sometimes it was a person, sometimes it was still life, sometimes it was any number of things. And then the professor said to me, and he had this big pad of paper, and he says, find all the horizontal lines. Then another sheet, now find all the vertical lines. Now find the diagonal lines. Now find all the circles. Find all the S shapes. Find all the L shapes. And basically we did this, we had this pad of paper and we would just make these lines, and it never looked at all like the thing we were supposedly to be learning to draw. But what I was learning was to see those elements, to see the horizontal lines, to see the vertical lines, to see the patterns, the S shape that took you through the composition, so that when I started actually drawing, I could see those design elements in what I was drawing. And so when you paint, or when you select an image to paint, you need to examine it in terms of its shape. Now let's talk some more about the shapes in it. Technically, though, as I said, you could use anything as a basis for a composition, but some resources, some scenes, some setups, some images are easier to use than others. Now let's look at some examples. I caught this photograph while I was walking in the woods. I love the textures of the leaves and the delicate colors. But will it have an easy pattern of light and darks for me to discover? Will it be easy to compose? Are there clear shapes in there that would be simple to define? I don't think so. Here's another one. There's two more scenes I caught. Near winter was one on the left. Over here, you can see this one I'm talking about. It's sort of all gray. There's a little bit of white. There's a little bit of dark. But it's very unclear. The same thing with this. There's lots of shapes, lots of vertical trees. But where's your eye rest? You could make a painting from this. Yes, you could. But what would be your patterns? Let's go into this again. I saw these leaves. I thought, what about that? That would be cool. And they're kind of interesting. There's a lot of interesting shapes in there. And that's a possibility. But now look at this, just this garden. Now there's a lot of texture in here, but there's in the painting doesn't have a lot of high contrast. It seems a lot of middle values and some darks. But where is the path in there? Where does the eye look in this particular one? So, I'm sorry, this painting here, this looks interesting. This is a photograph of Kale, but it's kind of monochromatic and hard to read. But maybe if I pump up the values like I was, and I have a little more contrast, but still, let's say it was all green. Well, we could imagine it to be all green. But really, I could add my own color to it. Now, this is actually not my painting. This is called Kale by Joyce Eesley. And I saw it at the Anderson this couple weekends ago. It was one of the beautiful paintings in the show. And Joyce is a very accomplished watercolor artist. But you can see here, do you think you would ever see Kale with this amount of color? No. She invented, maybe it had a little bit of the color, but not all of it. Do you think the values were exactly like they were? No. But so she had to make some decisions about values and hues in this painting. I altered the shapes, values, and textures in the color in this scene when I did this painting from this photograph. Oh yes, you can see it, but you can see I changed the texture, I simplified it, I dropped this down a little lower, I articulated the shapes back here, I made these shapes a little stronger so they would carry your eye through the painting. So I made a lot of adjustments. I increased the value here and here, and I created a little larger area back here. So I changed it. I made a lot of changes in the values, the shapes, and the textures in the scene. And that, it was a bit of a project. Could I work with these? Possibly. I could try this one. Let's see. Well, let's look at the values. They're pretty monochromatic. I don't know if I like, there's a lot of stuff in here. Pretty close in values, a lot in the middle range. I can't see any real clear shapes. Now, here I'm going to go back to the color. See the blacker part in the corner? What would happen if I got rid of that? Well, I got rid of it here. Now, where does my eye go? There's a lot of greens, but where does my eye go? That's the question I'm asking. Where does my eye rest? Now here, I moved the contrast up. We took the contrast, we increased it. Now we can see some clear shapes, some not so clear shapes. Got a definite line through here, a diagonal through here, a diagonal through here, a diagonal here, a diagonal there. That's pretty interesting. Now here, that would be another way of doing it, but that would make it awful dark, but it could be interesting. I don't know what I would do. Now, what if I used an old photo? Now this photo in the corner, which is kind of wrecked, but it still works. A while back, I made this pastel, which is quite sizable. It has and I changed it. I kept pretty close, but I still changed some things. I changed the background a little bit, made it higher. I made the houses a little bigger. In this painting, which I did a couple weeks ago for a demo, I moved the building a little bit. I dropped this down. I don't even know if I like this as much. I changed the sky a little bit. But you can see there's clear shapes, even in the so-called boring or quiet areas. There's areas to rest. There's also a path. There's variation in the sky, but it's still very pale. It's not drawing, the main theme or pathway is through this little road and then these houses. And then the telephone poles kind of help guide you down the way too, the vertical lines. So my professor back in school would have said, okay, where's your S shape? Here's your S shape. He would have said, okay, where are the horizontal vertical lines? Oh, find the vertical lines in here. Find the little vertical lines. You see, and what you do when you do that, when you're finding them, is you're finding patterns in your painting. And then sometimes when you want to make your viewer look a certain place, you might emphasize a pattern. You might emphasize it a little bit, or if you don't want them to have that pattern, then you de-emphasize it. But the whole idea is to look for the S shapes, to look for the verticals, the diagonals. There's a lot of diagonals in this way. This way, this way, this way. So even though this is very quiet with color, it's very active with the diagonals because diagonals create activity. So anyway, that's another It's possible to make a composition from, is it possible to, it's possible, but it's more challenging because the artist must decide on the focus, identify the shapes, identify patterns, create value structure, assign colors, create rest areas. There's just tons of work involved in deciding what composition you're going to be, what this composition is going to be. So it's not an easy task. Whereas it's easier to work with clearly defined shapes where the areas of objects are clearly defined. And then you can work and create interest in them. You can have areas of high contrast where you want the focal point area that have pattern but are quieter because they're closer in value. And also the variation of this being thin and this being a little thicker, and the space around the object makes it more interesting. So it really gets you to see the compositions and sort of, it has clear shapes that are big, smaller, smaller. It has diagonals, it has circles, it has real design elements you can clearly identify. Here's another one, clearly defined shapes. even the shape around here, the edge, is got different distances around it. So all of those factors make it easier to work from. And these were all, now here you have a simple shape, and your most primary area of interest is going to be this bouquet. And then you have a subtle gradation, because one of the ways you deal with quiet areas is you create gradations. And the gradations, like I see here, from dark to light, because your eye will tend to go from the dark to the light. And so you're actually, even though it's a quiet area, your eye will move through that area. And that's the gradation is what is causing your eye to travel in this composition. Now this one, this particular photo I'm not thrilled with, but it sort of is still a simple shape. It does have gradation between this side and this side, the right side and the left side behind the gold plate. But it was hard to pick up on this photograph. But here you have a simple shape, simple shapes, and yet there's a lot to be learned about in subtlety with all the shapes and the variation. There's a great deal of compositional balance. You have this shape balanced against these two, balanced against that, the diagonal patterns that you have created in here. So it's really simple enough that you can conquer it. Now here's another simple, diagonals, simple shapes, simple shapes. Here we can play, if you have simple shapes like I do here, it's the same pattern over and over again, varied a little bit with color. It's basically a whole series of paintings made with different color palette, the same painting, and it's simple. It's amazing what you can do with simple design with clear shapes, loud and soft conversations. When I say loud, it's high contrast. When I say soft or quiet conversations, I mean where values are close in value and colors are close together in value, and you don't see high contrast, it's quieter. When you have that in a painting, you don't have to worry, or in an image, you don't have to worry that you're going to not have what you're going to do with that space, because gradations from light to dark are a great way to move your eye through it, and quietness of it will help you. Don't pick images that have too much busy activity. You know, like I showed you the one that I did of the little stream, and then Joyce's image. Those two were challenging images to do. You could try them, but they will be challenging because you had to decide, make a lot of decisions about where your eye was going to be, where the contrast was going to be, what color you were going to put in there, and how you were going to have the viewer's eye move around the page. And that is a much more challenging than if you have simple shapes. So pick images with quiet spaces, even boring spaces. Look at this painting by Edward Hopper, or two paintings. You'll notice that he has basically in these two images the exact same scene with a different value structure. This has a lower key, this has higher contrast. They both have some elements of high key, but this one is definitely has a lot more high contrast. And you can feel the difference. Check out the value structure, just like I said. Notice the difference between these two and the steps between this. This is much lighter. This is about the same, but this is probably in the middle values. And you notice how restful this feels, where this feels more like heat. So by just changing his color palette, he created that. So what kind of images do I want you to select? I want you to select uncomplicated images, unbusy images. Make sure the images have clear shapes in them. Make sure the shapes vary in size. Make sure some shapes are very big while some of them are relatively small. Make sure the value contrasts are strong. Pick images you love. Remember, you are not painting the objects you love, though you will end up painting the objects you love. You are painting shapes. That's all painting is. It's all about shapes. If you want to paint an object, forget about the object and find and paint the shapes. Good luck. Remember to bring at least 5 different images, 8.5 by 11 size, you love to the workshop. Looking forward to seeing you coming up in a few weeks. There we go. I want to say goodbye, and I want to say if you have any questions, please ask me the questions in the comments below, or you can email me, or you can comment below. Some of you know how to call me. You can do that as well. I hope you found this to be helpful. I hope when you look now at paintings, you start looking at the shapes, you look at the patterns, you look at the designs, and just make sure to subscribe. Make sure to subscribe and like this, and remember to bring your 5 images and 8.5 by 11. Take care. Have a great day.